Tonight, we're going to be exploring lots of different areas of medicine. We're going to do 4 different areas of medicine. And each week, we're going to follow a similar kind of format. We're going to do 4 little kind of segments that explore how medicines work, how medical equipment works, how our body works, just all kinds of medical goodness. Now, our very first topic, which is this. Try this at home. Try this at home. Hey. Chat as well. But this part of the show is all about trying an experiment at home on yourself. Okay, and we're going to look at our wrist. Okay, we're going to look at our wrist and we're going to find out if you have evolved differently to everybody else, because evolution is still happening in our species. It doesn't just stop because we are who we are. Evolution is constantly kind of happening, but it's a very slow, long kind of process. But we can see it happening in our human species. Hello, a couple of people in the chat. We've got Selena and we've got Poison Chalice. Hello, Poison Chalice. So I want you to look at your wrist and I want you to do this. Put your thumb and little finger together like this. And I want you to kind of flex your hand up a little bit. I want you to tense your forearm. And it's going to look a little bit like this. I want you to look for that little kind of tendon that's popping out really prominently there. Can you see that? That's what you're looking for. Some of you will have it and some of you won't. If you are watching on the chat, let me know if you've got it up or not. Put yes or no in the chat, okay? Now, why is this important? Well, try this at home. Wrong button. The majority of people, okay, will have that tendon. 85% of people in the world will have this tendon. And it's called, or it's part of a muscle called the palmaris longus. Okay, a bit of Latin there for you. Palm, because it's on the palm side, okay, and longus because it's long. So it's a long palm muscle. You can see where we put it on that little diagram there. But the tendon comes all the way down and we can see it there. Now, 15% of the population do not have this tendon. It's completely missing from their physiology and anatomy. And what's happening is this muscle is really good and useful for us to grip and grasp and pull ourselves up and around. So when we were primates kind of 100,000 years ago or so, and we were scavenging around cliff faces, climbing trees, scavenging for food, this muscle was really good for us, helping us climb, okay? Now, as we've evolved into Homo sapiens, as we are now, we don't do that as much. So our evolution, our genetics is changing to remove this muscle from our anatomy and physiology because we don't use it. How cool is that? Who else online now? See, someone else has joined us. I can't read that. Hello, John. Nice to see you. So yeah, there we go. That's our first little bit of the show. Have you got that tendon or not? If you have, you're in the majority. But if you're missing that tendon, the palmaris longus muscle tendon, you have evolved differently to everybody else. Pretty cool, isn't it? We can just see that from our wrist. Right then, so we're going to have a look at our next place. We're going to have a look at something called when medicine got it wrong. When medicines go wrong. Okay, so we're going to look at things in the past where we thought would be a really good idea to keep us healthy or help us survive or treat an illness. But turns out they're pretty naff. Selena's got the tendon. Hello, that's great, Selena. So let's have a look at what this medicine is. Now, before I do this, if you were to go swimming in a lake, you would normally find a rubber ring or a life ring, a life raft ring kind of thing. A life raft ring? That's kind of a wrap, isn't it? On the side of the lake. So if someone's in the water struggling, you would throw the ring out to them to try and get it to them and try and pull them in and help them float and get them out of the water, wouldn't you? Okay. But kind of 100 years ago or so, there was a treatment for drowning. Okay. Now you might have heard of a phrase, if you are being slow or not kind of up to speed, you might have heard someone say to you, someone needs to blow some smoke up you to get you moving. Have you ever heard that phrase before? Someone needs to blow some smoke up your backside to get you moving. that phrase comes from what we're going to look at here, okay? Because a couple of hundred years ago, we thought that blowing smoke into someone's bottom when they drowned would be a nice revival, okay? Not just any old smoke, okay? Check this out. It's called a tobacco enema, okay? So what is an enema? An enema is when we put a medicine or something inside someone's bottom, into your rectum, to kind of treat a disease or illness, okay? The enemas are a completely legitimate way of administering some medicines now, okay? But a couple of hundred years ago, we thought that blowing tobacco smoke, like from cigarettes, into someone's bottom would be a way of helping someone recover from drowning if they weren't breathing, okay? And they used to have these sets out and about, a pair of bellows and a couple of pipes. I can kind of guess where you see where we're going with this. I apologise for this next picture. Don't worry, it's not real. It's a hand-drawn picture, not by me, but from the medical textbooks, okay? That is the procedure. Look at that. How amazing is that? So if someone was drowning and they got them out of the water, forget the kiss of life. We're going to put a tube into their bottom and blow cigarette smoke into their bottom to try and revive them. How crazy is that? Definitely medicine's gone wrong. Okay, so let's go and have a look at our next segment. Here comes the next feature.
Hey, you don't lick that!
Don't lick that. This is where we're going to look at lots of different medicines and how they work. And this is a story about a drug called Warfarin. So you might have heard of this drug, Warfarin. It's used in everyday medicine nowadays to help treat blood clots. And we'll kind of see a little bit more about this later on. But you might have seen older patients or older people in your family on a drug called Warfarin. But I want to tell you the story of how we discovered this drug, and it involves cows. Okay, so this is in the 1920s here, okay? We've got cows in America and they're eating some hail, what was called sweet clover. But what was happening to these cows was they started to bleed to death. This is a bit grim, this story, I know. But the cows just kind of randomly started to die of internal bleeding. Not very nice. So all these cows started to pass away, but we didn't know why. Okay, we know that what their food source was, and there was maybe a common theme. So scientists and vets were kind of trying to figure out what was going on. And this man here, Dr. Frank Schofield, figured out that the hay that they were eating was mouldy, and it was a compound in the hay and in the kind of that was produced by the fungus or the mould that was causing this bleeding in the cows. So these are kind of the hay. They're eating all this kind of fungal, mouldy hay, and they were ending up dead, basically. So they figured out what was causing it, so they could kind of make sure the hay wasn't damp and wasn't getting mouldy, so they could feed it the right food and they would survive. Okay, but then this guy, Dr. Carl Paul Link, and his students in America, in a city called Wisconsin, I can't say that, Wisconsin, found the actual compound. Okay, they found the actual compound, and what they found was that there was a molecule in the hay from the mould called coumarin, and it was converted into that second word just there called dicoumarol. And that thing there, dicoumarol, basically stopped vitamin K from working and doing its job when our blood clots. So if our blood clots, or if we cut ourselves and we want our blood to clot, vitamin K is really, really, really important for our blood to clot. And without vitamin K, what we call the clotting cascade, it's like a series of reactions that roll on one after another to make our blood clot and go all sticky, just stops and our blood won't clot. And if we remove it completely, our blood just kind of can seep out of blood vessels, and if there's any bruises or impact, it can leak out and kind of cause internal bleeding quite easily. Okay, so this guy here, Dr. Carl Paul Link, figured out that this mould was from coumarin. This coumarin was produced in the mould, and it was converted into dicoumarol, and that stopped vitamin K from working inside the cows. Okay, now what they did, they named it Warfarin. So dicoumarol isn't like a brilliant name, so let's name it after us, they said, because guess what Warfarin stands for? It stands for the Wisconsin Alumni Research Facility, and the last bit of R-in of coumarin. How cool is that? They've just gone, we're going to name it after us, where it was discovered and where we found it. It's pretty cool, isn't it? So that's what Warfarin, how it was named. It was named after the people that kind of discovered the compound in that hay, right? So what do we do with that then? Well, we thought, well, actually, if it's killing cows, we could use it to kill vermin. So they started putting it in foods and kind of pest repellents and things like that. Give it to rats, and oh dear, the rats died. And it's the same kind of thing that's used today. Okay, eating kind of pest kind of medicines, pest control food. If you've got mice or rats, okay, we'd use this to try and kill all these creatures. Not very nice, but if they are a pest, they've got to do something about it, okay? And then in the 1950s, we thought, well, actually, hang on, this would be really useful for humans too. So we can give warfarin to humans to help with blood clotting problems, okay? So who would have to have this? Well, if anyone's at risk of having something called a deep vein thrombosis, this is when clots can form in your veins deep in your body. You get it. Someone can get this from sitting still for a long time. So, for example, a patient that's going to be bedridden for a long time, not going to have a lot of movement. You don't want their blood to sit still and kind of pool in their veins. So you might want to give them some warfarin to keep their blood nice and runny and not sticky, so it won't clot. Pulmonary embolisms, they're little clots that can move around the body and kind of stick into your lungs. And if that happens, blood flow won't go through your lungs and you can't get oxygen in your blood, and it's not a great place to be, okay? And we might want to give it to patients that have had things from outside the body put into them that are not normal human physiology. So things like knee and hip replacements or aortic valve replacements. These are metals and plastics that are put into the body, and your blood could clot around them or clot in those areas because it's a foreign object in your body. That's what your blood does. It sees something foreign, it'll clot around it. So we give warfarin to kind of stop it from clotting in these areas. Pretty awesome, isn't it? All of this is from cows that were eating mouldy hay in the 1920s. I think it's a pretty cool discovery. Should we go to our next segment? If you've got any questions, drop them in the chat. I can see a couple of you were quite impressed with that little story on there. Right then, let's go and have a look at our final segment this week. And this one is called
How Medical Kit Works.
How Medical Kit Works. And this week, we're going to have a look at a pulse Doppler. A pulse Doppler. Now, everybody watching this, I'd love to know how old you are. If you put on your, yeah, moo. If you are kind of probably under the age of, I'd say at least 40, I reckon, maybe 30 or 40, you probably had one of these used on you, but you won't remember. Because this is a pulse Doppler, and it can be used by a midwife or a sonographer to listen to your pulse, your heart when you were a baby inside your mom's womb. So we would have used this to listen to a baby's heartbeat. But someone called a vascular scientist can use this to listen to your own pulse. I'm going to listen to my pulse now and then explain how this works, okay? So to make this work, we have to put a bit of ultrasound gel on the end of the probe here. Just a little blob, like that. And I'm going to try and listen to my brachial artery that runs over my arm just here, over my elbow. If you want to find it, if you put your arm out nice and straight, come up from your little finger up the side of your arm and then just go over this first bump here. Put your fingers just across that area and you might be able to feel your pulse. It's called the brachial artery and it runs across this area and down into your lower arm to supply blood to your lower arm, okay? Right, so you've got a pulse right here. And this is what mine sounds like. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you can hear this on the, I'm going to put my device there. Here we go. You hear that? It has that wobble sound, doesn't it? It goes, wah, 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 wah. Right, let's do it once more. It's that wobble sound you hear, that wah, wah, wah. Every time my heart contracts, it pushes a wave of blood through my arteries and it stretches the artery wall, and the artery wall stretches and then recoils and it kind of bounces a couple of times, okay? So it creates that kind of double or triple kind of push of the blood through the artery, okay? But how do we get that sound? Because this uses ultrasound. So when I turn this on, even though you hear it's like a hiss in the background, if I was to put this probe to my ear, I can't hear anything coming out the end of the probe. The sound waves coming out of the end of the probe are way, way, way above our hearing frequency that I can't hear. We can't hear this, okay? So what happens is we push a really high frequency wave in to the blood. And if you look, the blood flows in the opposite direction. As I put my arm out, the blood is flowing this way down towards my hand, okay? And I put the probe facing, I'm trying to get on screen properly, there we go, this way, the opposite way. So I'm fighting the blood flow, okay? So the sound wave goes one way and the blood's going the other way, so they crash into each other, okay? And what happens is it bounces back a sound wave, so a bit like an echo. We throw the sound wave in, the blood hits it back, and it comes back to the sensor, okay? But as it bounces back, the frequency of the sound wave is ever so slightly different, and this is still way above our hearing frequency. We cannot hear any of this sound, okay? But the difference between the two sound waves going in and back out is within our hearing range, okay? So the machine measures the differences between the two sound waves, and typically it's kind of around about between 100 and 200 hertz. I'm going to show you what that sounds like in a minute, okay? Now in our arteries, the blood is not flowing at one speed like a car going down a motorway. In the middle of the artery, it's going really fast, and on the outside, kind of towards the walls of the artery, the blood is actually flowing a little bit slower because it's got drag. It kind of, the sides of the walls of the arteries slow the outer bit of blood down, so it goes faster in the middle than it does on the outside. And this creates all kinds of different frequencies bouncing backwards and forwards. So the machine, the Doppler, creates an amalgamation of this to give us this sound, okay? So I'm going to use my phone and I'm going to play you what roughly this is 160 hertz. See if you can hear this. Very low, okay, I'm going to just turn that up again, try it once more. When the advert's gone off my phone. There we go, 1 second. There we go. So what a frequency generator, that's what 160 hertz sounds like, okay? Now obviously we get lots and lots of different sound waves back at all different ranges and they all get mixed together. That's why you hear that kind of, it's still a low sound, like that woof, woof type sound, but it's very kind of crackly and mixed because of all those different speeds of the blood flow in the different parts of the artery. And that is how a pulse Doppler works. So No problem, Poison Chalice. There we go. Thanks for watching, everybody. My name's Tom Warrender, the Human Guinea Pig. Thanks for watching. Come back next week. We'll do some more experiments on our body. We're going to look at some different medicines and also another piece of medical equipment. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.
Monday medicine, Monday